Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Crush the Rush podcast. I have to tell you, today's episode is one you're going to want to save, share, and definitely come back to. Because if you've ever felt like you're doing all the things, eating well, trying to move your body, attempting to take care of yourself, dealing with midlife, whatever, and yet somehow still feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and like you're starting over every single Monday, then this is for you. My guest, Courtney Townley, has spent over 3 decades in the wellness industry, and she is here to tell you that your problem is not willpower, it's not your schedule, and it's not even your habits. It's that nobody taught you how to lead yourself. And so she's breaking down the 4 practices that actually create lasting change. And I promise they are so much simpler than anything the wellness industry has ever been selling to you. Less overwhelm, more self-trust, and a complete reframe of what it means to be healthy. Let's get into it. Hi, Courtney. Welcome to the Crush the Rush podcast. I'm actually very excited for this week's episode because I feel like it's a topic that we hear a lot about, but we don't often have experts in to give us like the real tea on what's happening with this phase of life.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes. Okay. We're going to dig right in because I feel like this is the type of interview where I could just ask question after question after question. But before we do, I'd love to really get an understanding of what does building a life first business mean to you? And I think it's interesting because before we started recording, we talked a lot about podcasting, and you've had a podcast for like 11 plus years, which is amazing. And you've been in business for a long time, especially in the wellness industry. So I would love to know, like, what does that life first priority look like for you right now?
Yeah, right now it looks very different than it did probably 10, 15 years ago, because I think like so many of us, we have to learn it the hard way, where we don't put life first. And then we realize, like, why am I not feeling fulfilled? Why am I, feeling just so challenged internally? So that definitely happened for me. And life first, right, in this season of my life is very much just knowing what I call my priority filter. Like, I really know what my priorities are. And, they boil down to 3 things. It's my health, it's my family, and it's my business. And those 3 things don't always fall in the same order, right? Like, I would love to say that it's always putting my health first because that's how I can be there for everybody else. And I would say largely most of my life that has been true. But like in this season, I still have a 16-year-old who's, a couple years left in the house. I have a father has Parkinson's disease. And so he needs a lot of extra care. And so I really feel like I'm in the season of being okay with really putting my family first and not abandoning my own self-care, but just making sure that really is top of my list, because it's what makes me feel most in integrity with myself right now. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy because there's a lot of business opportunities and things that have come along where it's like, I have to say no because my dad lives 3,000 miles away and I need to be available. And so it's making hard decisions to make that possible.
What do you think, because I know so many people can relate to this listening, what do you think helps you sort of keep those priorities like top of mind? Because a lot of times we'll hear that and we'll be like, oh, yes, I totally need to do that. And then like when push comes to shove, we're like, oh, this opportunity came and I said yes. And we end up saying yes to so many things, but it's maybe not the things that we really wanted to say yes to.
I think it's a lot of hard lessons learned. I have overscheduled and overcommitted and over-yesed for so much of my life that now I think you almost swing to the other end of the spectrum where you realize like, okay, that is clearly not working because I just keep ending up in the same place, which is burnout and resentment. And that is not where I want to live. And so I think that this is the beauty of aging. We just become much more discerning in what we say yes to, because we know the cost. We know that every yes involves a sacrifice. And I think I'm just more clear than ever on what I'm willing to sacrifice and what I'm not.
Yeah, I love that. I know that you have so much experience in the wellness industry, and so I'm really interested to sort of like dig into this, but I'm curious, like, what themes are you seeing right now in terms of, if we're talking about women business owners and they're running families and they're running businesses and they're running, older elderly parents and they're running, kids at the same time, where are you seeing most women maybe get stuck or overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think the information overload is a very real thing in the age of technology. I've heard it called infobesity, which I just love that term because it
Oh,
is. There's so much information, and information isn't what changes our life. It's not what de-stresses us. It's not what makes us
mhm.
healthier. It's what we do with that information. And when we have a fire hose of information constantly coming at us, there is no doing. There's just a lot of consumption.
Mhm.
And so I do think that we tend to overconsume information. And the other thing that I would say is we have long been sold this idea that health really boils down to diet and exercise.
Mhm.
And no one would argue that those are important elements, of course. But really, health boils down to stress management.
Mm.
And that is so much bigger than diet and exercise. And I honestly think that that's a big relief to a lot of women because you could remove stress from any area of your life and you would literally improve your cellular health.
Yes.
I mean, that's the
I feel
truth.
like
And
you
that,
would feel like a different person,
yeah,
really, truly.
yeah. So I always say, like, I kind of grew up in the generation where it was always that the messaging, eat less, exercise more, which I still think is very much out there. But the equation that I work with my clients on is health is really two parts. It's removing unnecessary stress.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of women will say, well, what is unnecessary stress? Because it all feels necessary.
Yeah.
But it's not. Like we're generating a lot of unnecessary stress in our own life because of the way we talk to ourselves, maybe our unwillingness to set boundaries, our unwillingness to have hard conversations or say no to something that historically we've always said yes to, right? All of that is unnecessary stress. But the other part of the equation is we have to start leaning into on purpose stress. So what is on purpose stress? Well, it's the kind of stress that fortifies you and helps you to become a more resilient human. And this would be things like strength training, like setting boundaries, like going after the job that you've really wanted your whole life, but you keep telling yourself now's not the time, right? Like there's a lot of things that are stressful, but also enhance our life in beautiful ways. So it's really those two things that I think I've seen time and time again improve the health of a human.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of love this topic. I'm going to paraphrase it as like good stress and bad stress.
Yeah, great.
It's such a different way to think about it. And I'm going to go back to what you said at the beginning of information overload. And a lot of times I think the information overload creates the bad stress, right? Because there's like so much that you're scrolling or thinking about, and it's just like in your face all the time.
Yes.
If you're listening and you're like, okay, this concept is really interesting, like what's the first step in sort of recognizing maybe the stressors that are in your life that maybe need attention or maybe is a good stress and you need to recognize it as that?
Yeah. Well, let me give you a visual because I'm a visual learner. So
Yes,
I love
please.
like imagery, but I like to think of our capacity to hold stress as a bucket, right? So just imagine you have a bucket and there's a lot of things that contribute to the stress bucket. It is not just diet and exercise. Like, yes, physiological health is one thing that can contribute to the bucket, but health is multidimensional. It's a lot of parts. So it's also mental, how you think. Are you a problem solver or do you marinate in problems, right? Do you talk to yourself in a way that's useful or in a way that actually is really damaging? So the way we talk to ourselves absolutely can contribute to that bucket. Our emotional health. Can you sit with hard emotions? A lot of people can't. I would say most people can't. Most people eat, drink, Netflix away their emotions because they don't want to feel them. What's your environment like? Right? Like what is contributing to your environmental stressors? Is it noise? Is it working in an office with no windows? Right? There's a lot of things to consider there. And then we have relational stress. Life is relationship. We are in relationship with people and the entire world around us. And the quality of those relationships is going to be a big contributor to that bucket of stress or not. And the final thing that I would say is what I call just the spiritual stressors. And that really is just your sense of purpose, right? Wanting to make an impact in your lifetime and sort of have a purpose in your life, decide on a purpose in your life. And when we don't do that, it can cause a lot of internal friction. So when you kind of do an audit of those areas, which I always encourage women to do, which is why I wrote this book, you can start to see where the gaps are. You can start to see where the contributors to that bucket are. But here's the other thing to remember. The bucket can only tolerate so much stress. And then it starts to overflow and make a really big mess in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But the women that I work with are largely, I would say, between the ages of like late 30s all the way up to probably mid 60s. And what's happening in that time in our life chemically is our bucket is also losing resilience because we're losing estrogen and progesterone, two hormones that actually help to fortify the body. It helps us to tolerate cortisol. When those hormones start to leave the party, our bucket isn't as strong as it once was. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't things we can do to fortify the bucket, but I don't know if that image helps people, like just talking about that the load in the bucket is really important to stay accountable to. And then also, what are you doing to help to fortify the bucket itself? How are you taking care of yourself so you can tolerate stress better? It doesn't mean we don't want to remove unnecessary stressors, but we are able to tolerate a stress load better when we are taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, I love this. I'm going to pivot a little bit because I know you also talk a lot about self-leadership. And so I'm curious, can we talk about what that means? And I believe when you sort of started thinking about this, you realized that like, and you mentioned this already, like the traditional wellness playbook was not really the answer around, you know, how do we have this moment where we are going to feel better and we can change our patterns?
Yeah. So I think the wellness industry has really made a lot of money off the idea that we must outsource. Someone else out there knows better than you do about your body, about your life, about what's going to make you happy. And of course, I'm a huge fan of working with helpers and healers because I think they can make the journey so much easier. But no one really understands the wholeness of your life in the way that you do. So the information that works for your coworker for her to improve her health may not at all work within the realm of your life because you have a different set of circumstances. And in all the years that I've coached, I've never met a woman who didn't know at least probably a dozen things she could be doing to elevate her health and happiness. The bigger question is, why aren't we doing those things?
Yes.
And this is where self-leadership comes in. Self-leadership is knowing who you want to be in the world and what you want to go after. And then managing your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors to get you there. And for years, I bought into this whole idea that I just needed a protocol that someone else created in order for me to improve my health. And I did lots of them, so many of them, until I started to see a pattern in my own work that I was doing with clients. I was very much in the trenches of fat loss for about a decade. And I would see my clients work for about a year or 18 months really hard on recomping their body, like changing their body fat and building muscle and all the things. And it was a beautiful thing to see. But the pattern that I started to get really concerned about was they would dedicate themselves to all this work. And then after they hit their goal, they would start to backtrack. And what I realized is, hang on a second. We're giving people lists of rules and regulations. We're giving them check boxes to, check off, which is absolutely creating an outcome. But why aren't they sustaining the results? Well, because we weren't teaching them self-leadership skills. We weren't teaching them about the importance of self-image work or how to manage their thoughts or how to be with difficult emotions and not eat or drink them away. And so, of course, if we don't change what we believe about ourselves, we're always going to return to the things that prove our image to be true. And so that was a big awakening for me. It was like, holy cow, I've spent a lot of years helping a lot of people to create an outcome, which is, I guess, in some way a win. Yeah. But if they can't sustain the outcome, what the hell's the point? So I always say this, if anyone, has heard me speak before, they probably have heard me say this, but I'm a really big believer that the wellness industry teaches us how to chase once in a lifetime transformations. And that's not what health is. Health is learning how to navigate a life of transformation. And that's what self-leadership is. It's learning how to navigate hard things in life, because life is going to throw a lot of them at you.
Yeah, I think it's very much a reframe on how you think of it. But like, as you were explaining it, I was like comparing it to business. And I think it happens in business too, where like you hit a goal and then you're like, well, I don't know what to do next. It's almost like we're not prepared because we put all of our eggs in this like one basket and we forget about everything else that is going on.
Yeah, I can totally see that comparison. I think it's so true. And also, I think in business too, we can push really hard to do a launch, sell a product, bring in new clients, whatever it is. And then we fail to acknowledge that we're probably going to need a little bit of rest and recovery on the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we keep pushing, and then eventually we burn out, and we just, we don't understand what happened. And the reality is we weren't acknowledging that our biology is meant to oscillate through periods of intense effort and periods of rest and recovery. Mm-hmm. And when we erase the rest and recovery part, man, do we get ourselves into a whole lot of trouble. Yes. And then we tell ourselves that we're broken, something's wrong with us, and none of that is true.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're listening to this, I feel like a lot of our listeners are busy. They don't have a lot of time, and they're like, okay, I'm going to think about, how I feel a little bit differently. I'm going to think about my energy a little bit differently. What's like one small shift, if you're listening, that you could do right now to sort of maybe embrace this reframe of how you think about your overall health?
Yeah. Can I give you two? Because I think they go hand in hand.
Give us all the tips.
The first thing is I would really challenge anyone listening to give yourself maybe 10 minutes today, just 10 minutes, where you ask yourself the question, what does health mean to me in this season of my life? Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, most of us have never asked that question. So we have just adopted beliefs from the wellness industry or from whatever's being pushed on us out there, that health is a body size or health is a certain level of athleticism. Well, that's not what I believe health is at this stage of my life. Mm-hmm. Health is waking up and really loving my life. It's having the energy and the fortitude to show up in the spaces and places that I really care about, my business being one of them. And so when I'm really clear on what health is, the next part of that is really thinking of health as a direction. Mm-hmm. What can I do today that is going to move me in the direction of that vision of health? And you're always only one decision away. Like, what is one thing I could do right now to move me back in the direction of that vision? It might be drinking a glass of water. It might be going pee. It might be giving yourself 5 minutes to lay on the floor in your office and just take a little rest. Right? It might be picking up the phone to make a difficult conversation or have a difficult conversation so you can get it off your chest. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, it can look like anything, but those little movements are not to be underestimated because they compound over time. And I always use the analogy of if you were going to go to the grocery store today and you went down the road you normally go down, but there was a roadblock because they were doing construction, whatever, there was a detour. I guarantee you would not pull over on the side of the road and pitch a fit for the next 6 months that you're a loser and you can't find your way to the grocery store. Of course you wouldn't do that. But we do that a lot with our health, right? We bump up against one obstacle and we convince ourselves that, oh, there's something I don't know. I need more information. No, we just need to make a new decision. And so if in the case of the grocery store, you would probably just figure out the next street to turn on and find your way to the store. And that's the way I like to think about health. You're one decision away from moving back in the direction you intended to go. What is that one decision right now? Mm-hmm. Like, what is it for you? Like, seriously, asking that question to you. What is it?
That's a great question. I love when the interview turns on me. So for me personally right now, I think it's making time for rest, but it's also making time for movement. Actually, when we're recording this, I actually just had COVID, which I'm like, does this even happen now? Are we back in 2020? And I feel like I was on this great path of this is going to be my year of I'm going to focus on myself. And then I was totally derailed. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get on the treadmill today. That's my one thing.
Amazing. So, yeah. And the other thing I would ask, because I think this is really helpful for people, because you have inevitably been on a treadmill before. You own a treadmill. Is that right? Okay. Yeah. So you're invested in this. But what we do is we often play this game with ourselves that I should be going back to the amount of cardio that I did on the treadmill before I was sick. And that's a mistake. So what's the bare minimum today you're going to do on the treadmill?
I did 20 minutes. That was amazing. And I was dying. And I'm like, oh God, what is it? But I'm like, nope, just do 20 minutes today. We'll do 25 minutes tomorrow. Maybe by the end of the week, we'll get back to where we were.
Yeah, absolutely. But you'll go to bed with a little more peace in your heart tonight, knowing that you just extended yourself that little bit of nourishment.
Yeah.
Versus pushing it off until you could do an hour or you could do, whatever crazy bar we set for ourselves.
Yeah. I really love the one thing because I feel my other question is, people don't have a lot of time and they're juggling a lot of roles. Like you mentioned all the different roles that you're juggling. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, how are you structuring having like a moment to think about your health as you're building a business, writing a book, taking care of your family? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So for me, it's every morning. I mean, every morning I always, I call it the power hour. It's not an hour. Sometimes it's 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. But one of the things that I do every morning is I always remind myself of who I am devoted to being in the world today. Like, how do I want to show up? Whatever the day is going to bring me, who am I going to show up as? And that refocus every single morning, it's amazing how much it changes my day. Because the days I don't do it, because I'm human and I have days I miss it like everybody else, the day kind of blows me like a tumbleweed, right? I don't really have the focus and I'm reactive to everything that happens to me. And then I don't go to bed with peace in my heart. I feel like there's a lot of internal friction. I call it integrity pain because I didn't show up the way I wanted to. So just that simple reminder of what health means to me, where my focus is, what my priorities are, and really who I'm devoted to being in this season of my life. It's just a touch point to say, no, this is what's important today. And this is what I'm committed to.
Yeah. I always say I feel like a sloth when I don't have like 20 minutes to myself in the morning. And the 20 minutes could be anything, but I feel like if I don't have that focus time, like I am very reactive throughout the day, and it feels like a weird day because I wasn't like as intentional as I should be. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about realignment, and we sort of talked about it in my example, and that is, you're working on something and then you get completely derailed, and then, you're like, oh, I blew it again. And I think about this with like diet culture a lot of like, okay, well, I'm just going to eat this hamburger or whatever today, and tomorrow I'll start over again. And so how are you adjusting to, okay, things are going to happen and we can reset?
Well, first of all, acknowledging that things are definitely going to happen, right? Like life loves to throw us curveballs, and sometimes it's going to throw you 12 curveballs in a day. You have the best laid plans and life just has other plans. And so because the truth is, I think sometimes we delude ourselves into believing that the really successful people in the world, whether it's with their business or their health, that they never get derailed. Their life is somehow so blessed that they just, are on this perfectly sunny day with unicorns and butterflies. And of course, that's not true. But people who are successful, they are way better at getting realigned when they get derailed and when life throws those curveballs. So I live in Montana. We do a lot of campfires here, and campfires are a ton of work to build, right? You got to like find the wood, you got to build the ring, you've got to have the right like amount of wind going into the flame. But once it's started, to keep it going, all you have to do is chuck in a log every once in a while. And that's how I look at like momentum towards anything. And with health, if you can realign quickly, it's akin to throwing a log on the fire. You're not gonna have to do all this work of rebuilding the fire. But when you get misaligned for days, months, weeks, or years, it's a lot more work to build the fire. It's not that it can't be done, but my point being is realignment is simply what we talked about earlier. It's what is the decision I can make right now to pivot me back in the direction I intended to go. That's all it is. And there's a great quote. It's not mine. I don't even know who said it, but I use it all the time. It's that life is one long series of problem solving. And the sooner you accept that truth, the less you will suffer. Because we keep kidding ourselves that life isn't supposed to have problems. It's always going to have problems forever and always. So how do you show up in those moments? And how do you pivot yourself back quickly so you don't let it derail you for months or years?
Yeah. Gosh, that's such good advice. I love that. I want to ask a couple of rapid fire questions. Like I said, I feel like I could ask 100 questions today, but what's one daily non-negotiable that you have for your health?
I would say absolutely sleep, hands down. Like I'm a big sleeper, and I just know I have proven to myself and everyone around me too many times that when I'm not well slept or I don't get enough sleep, I'm just not a pleasant person to be around. And I don't like how I show up.
Yeah.
I'm more reactive to everything.
I always say sleep cures all things.
It does.
Really, it truly does.
It does. And there's nothing a good night's sleep can't help soften. So if you're struggling with something, put yourself to bed, because I guarantee tomorrow it will just feel a tiny bit lighter.
Yeah, I love that. What's a wellness trend that we should pay attention to?
I could answer that two ways. Like, I don't know in terms of positive or negative, but I'm going to go with negative. This whole concept that skinny is the healthy thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've worked with countless athletes and women who were rail thin throughout my career, who were a very far cry from health, you know? And so this constant aspiration to just be thinner, be smaller, I think is a huge detriment to women's health. And I rarely meet women who are obsessed about being thinner that are very happy and healthy. Like it's just, they don't go hand in hand.
That's a really good point. What's a simple habit that you have that you believe really creates a ripple effect?
A simple habit that I have that creates a ripple effect. I would say like pollinating my day with just really quick, like checking in with myself, like just hand on heart. How you doing, Courtney? What do you need, Courtney? Just like, you know, anyone in my life who loves me would do. It doesn't take a lot of time. And I have to be really open to the answers because honestly, I a lot of times don't like the answer. Like you need to put away the day, right? Or you need to like take some rest or go eat a meal. These are all things that I could easily bypass just to keep pushing. And there comes a huge cost if I keep ignoring those messages.
Yeah, such good advice. Okay, because you have been in business and the wellness industry for so long, what is something that you wish someone would have told you at the beginning of your career?
I would say that health is self-leadership because I spent the first 20 years of my career in a space of doing the opposite, like telling people what to do, giving them prescriptive programs. And again, I am not saying that there isn't a time and place where that could be helpful, but the end game always needs to be setting the client free. And the only way we can do that is helping them to build really robust self-leadership skills.
So good. I know you have a new book out and I know it covers a lot of this. So tell us a little bit about what's inside and what we can expect.
Yeah. So the Consistency Code is the name of the book, and the subtitle is A Midlife Woman's Guide to Deep Health and Happiness. And it's really interesting how this book came about because I taught a course for a decade called the Consistency Code. And the reason that course came into existence is because I was working with a business coach. And at the time, I was incredibly frustrated because everyone who I worked with in business was trying to get me to sell weight loss and body image and things that were sexy, right? Things that they knew would sell. And I knew in my heart that is not at all my messaging or the work that I wanted to be doing because I'd done that. And I'd been there, done that, had the t-shirt, didn't want to keep doing it. So her question to me was, okay, Courtney, if you could only teach a woman 4 things, what would you teach her? Like about, the things that you really believe. And so I went away for the weekend, and ultimately that is how the Consistency Code was born, because the Consistency Code is basically 4 practices. It's 4 umbrellas of practices. So there's a lot of practices that fall under each one of these umbrellas, but it's the practice of awareness, the practice of organization, the practice of follow through, and the practice of realignment. And you could hear those things and be like, okay, well, yeah, duh, those all sound really obvious. And they are obvious. They're simple, but simple is not easy. And there's a reason we're not doing those things. And so the book gets really into the nitty gritty about how to do these things with more ease and grace. And at the end of every chapter, I give people a lot of questions to consider and ways to apply the work. So there's just a lot of tools if anyone's listening who feels like, this really shouldn't feel this hard. Why does this feel so hard? Right? Like this book is really to just help women take a big sigh of relief and say, okay, there is a different way. And it's not what has been sold to me.
Yeah. Gosh, I love this so much. I love a good framework also. And so I feel like it's so easy to follow. And I love what you said about simple isn't always easy. So like we want to keep it simple so that when it does get hard, we can stick to it. And I think that framework sounds amazing. Like I said, this is such a huge topic, but I feel like you gave us so many like little tidbits to think about and sort of maybe to reframe how we're feeling, especially in this phase of life. If our listeners want to connect with you, tell us where we can find you, where we can find your book, and probably ask more questions as we sort of digest this episode.
Yeah, the best place to find me is my website, graceandgrit.com. The book is sold on all major online platforms, so you can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the places. Or you can just go to theconsistencycode.com. The book has its own website, and you can find out all the places where you can buy it there. So those are probably the best places.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.